It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
And if you've got a particularly curious teenager, you don't know what's in their glass. Or you don't know that they finished their 0% bottle and then poured some of yours into...
In about 15.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Today on the Happy Families podcast, Kylie and I are going to be talking about kids and alcohol. Well, we're going to talk about that, but we'll also be talking about kids and non-alcoholic drinks. That is, the drinks that look like, taste like, smell like, and feel like alcohol, but aren't alcohol. I'm speaking about the mixers and the mocktails that you can buy now, and the beers, the 0% beers that are out there. That's the conversation we're having today. Now, at the outset, I should highlight we are non-drinkers. Neither Kylie nor I drink alcohol at all, but Kylie, I had this, I was in the airport lounge recently. I catch a lot of airplanes, so I get to sit in the lounges. And for those of you who haven't been in the lounge, once you go in there, they've got a bar and drinks are on tap. You can literally go in and preload before your flight if you're a drinker. There's wine, there's beer, there's all. When I go in there, I normally just get some soda water because that's about as heavy as I go. Every now and again, I'll live on the edge and receive because they're free, a lemon, lime and bitters. But that's when I'm really getting out there. But just recently, when I asked what drinks they had available, they mentioned that there was a cider. And I said, I wouldn't mind an apple cider. Hang on a sec. Does it have alcohol in it? And they said, yeah, it's an alcoholic cider. And I said, no, I don't drink alcohol. Water will be fine. And they said, well, we've got a 0.0% Peroni. I didn't even know what Peroni was. But I said, so you're saying that it's a non-alcoholic drink, but it's 0%. So Peroni's a kind of beer. And they said, yeah, 0%. And I thought, I've never had it. I've never tried beer. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to have a 0% crack at this thing. And as somebody who is getting close to 50 and does not and has not consumed this sort of stuff before, I put it to my lips. I smelled it and I thought, I don't like the smell of this, but I'll give it a crack. I had a sip and I thought, that is possibly the grossest drink I've ever had in my life. Sorry to the people who make Peroni, but I hated it. It was gross. And I thought, but everybody loves beer. Everyone makes in Australia such a big deal about beer. I'm going to give it another go. Like the second sip can't possibly be as bad as the first sip. People say that you have to, what's the word? You become accustomed to a drink. You have to
acquire
the taste. That's it, yeah. And I thought maybe I just need a second sip so I can acquire the taste.
How did that go for you?
Oh, it was so gross. So I left pretty much a full bottle of 0.0% Peroni on the table. I couldn't drink it. It was just awful.
Well, this actually comes off the back of an article on the ABC website by Kelly Scott, and she poses the question about whether or not giving our curious teens non-alcoholic drinks is problematic.
Yeah.
So I'm posing the question, Dr. Coulson, is it a problem for us to give our kids non-alcoholic drinks?
Well, let me pose the problem back to you in the form of a real life incident or scenario. So we've got 6 kids. Imagine our 13-year-old daughter. She calls in at Coles or Woolies, and while she's there buying some groceries for us because we're too lazy to go to the shops ourselves or something like that, I don't know, she sees on the shelf on special a 6-pack of Peroni 0% beer. You can buy it for like $14 or $15 or something. I've looked it up on Google just now.
She must have your credit card.
Okay. And she says, you know what? It's 0% alcohol. Mum and Dad will never know. I'm going to buy the 6-pack and give it a go. How would you feel about that? Like, would you be okay with our 13-year-old trying 0% beer on her way out of Coles? And that's probably a pretty bad look, but just for the sake of the argument, how would you feel about it? Or even if she was sitting at our table, would you be comfortable sitting down and saying, hey, we want you to see what beer tastes like, kiddo. Here's a 0% beer. There's no alcohol in it. Have a go. What do you reckon?
So because of the lifestyle choices that we make, I think I'd probably be really uncomfortable with the fact that she's done it behind my back if she was to go and buy it by herself.
And yet I would feel so uncomfortable with her sitting at my dining table as a 13-year-old drinking what is supposed to be a beer. Like that's going to be provocative, right? That's confronting.
Yes, very much so. But again, I'm questioning why she's doing it. Is she doing it to push my buttons?
Okay.
Or is she doing it because we've had a conversation about it and she's curious?
Yeah.
Like there's so many scenarios that this could play out. But I think that for the most part, because of the choices that we make,
yep,
it would be confronting either way.
Yeah, it would. And that's because we are non-drinkers and we've discouraged our children from drinking as well.
Yeah, but I think in spite of all of that, my initial response is my 13-year-old is going to open that bottle up and she's going to take a whiff. And that's going to do a head in.
She's going to be like me.
But she's literally going to be like you. I remember when my nan, she asked if I wanted a hot chocolate one morning. And I said, yep. And she brought to the table a cup of coffee.
Right.
And I said, Nan, I think this is coffee. I mean, they're totally different colours.
Yeah, and we don't drink coffee either, right? And
she said, no, it's not. She got really, really upset at me.
Wow.
We didn't realise until a little bit later that there was the beginning stages of dementia.
Oh, okay. So you don't think she was trying to trick you into drinking coffee?
No.
She just brought it to you and said, hot chocolate, because I have this, but you're like, but she'd forgotten how to make it.
Yeah. And I took one sip of this stuff and I was like, I cannot drink this.
Right.
And
now,
the reality
coffee drinkers who listen to our podcast right now, which is pretty much 99.9% of our audience, is going, what is the matter with you people? You don't drink alcohol, you have 6 children, and you don't drink coffee?
I can't even stand the smell. So
I avoid the aisle in the supermarket. I don't like the smell either.
I have friends who obviously are non-drinkers, alcohol or coffee, and they love the smell of a coffee bean.
Yeah, right.
I just can't stand the smell of it.
It's like when you go to the perfume bar and you've got to whiff the coffee in between. Yeah. And I'm like, no. I'm going to get high on the perfume instead. Like, seriously, I can't do it.
So for me, just thinking about, I guess, the logistics of our home, I'm not going to be too stressed out about my kids trying any of these things because it does require an acquired taste. And if they don't have So
you're saying trying the 0% things and just seeing what it tastes like?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm thinking this through, and I think there are 2 sides to this. So if you're in a family where alcohol is not the norm, where you drink very rarely or not at all, this probably sits pretty well. Like this what we're talking about, that feels right to me. But I'm thinking, in spite of that, there's a lot of kids who really, they feel like they need to drink this stuff because they look cool. It's like the forbidden fruit. So whether it's cigarettes or vapes or whether it's alcohol, there's a certain status that goes along with being seen to be drinking this. And kids want to be grown up. I kind of think, though, with that whole grown-up thing, like when we bring out the Petriti, which is a non-alcoholic grape juice that's been carbonated, or if we bring out the appetizer, or maybe we go to a restaurant and we decide we're going to splurge, which happens like twice a year, and I'll order a mocktail, the kids go crazy. They're like, I want the mocktail too. But I don't think they're doing it because they want the alcohol. I think they're doing it because they just really like the taste of these drinks. Like, they're actually pretty sweet. They're pretty nice.
Well, I was about to say, those drinks are really different to what you're talking about with your 0% beers and stuff like that, because it's literally the taste of a beer without the alcoholic content.
Yeah.
It's the taste of a non-alcoholic wine. Like, it literally tastes like wine. Whereas, your appetizer or your...
Yeah, they're not actually meant to be alcohol substitutes.
No, not at all.
Yeah, fair call.
They're fancy drinks for people who don't drink.
Okay, so moving back to it, the initial response, at least in a family like ours, is not going to be an issue because the kid's going to taste it and it won't feel like forbidden fruit. It's just going to feel like it's disgusting.
Well, and they've got the modelling in the home is that we don't drink. This concept that for kids, they feel like drinking or smoking cigarettes or doing drugs or whatever is a gateway to adulthood. It's a gateway to independence. And,
right, yes. We're adults, though, and we're modelling that not all adults need alcohol or whatever. Yeah. So the Alcohol and Drug Foundation are concerned that kids are going to be conditioned to drink real alcohol beverages in the long term, and they're arguing that it could be a gateway to alcoholic consumption as the kids get older and then start to get access to the real deal. I want to talk about the flip side to our situation for families where alcohol is part of daily life and whether or not it's a good or a bad thing in that context.
So I'm thinking about this a little bit deeper, obviously coming from a non-alcoholic background.
Yeah, a non-alcohol consumption background. Let's just clarify. Just because you drink doesn't mean that Kylie suddenly called you an alcoholic. I'm just wanting to be really clear about that. I know that's not what you meant. Everyone knows that. Everyone loves you.
But I'm thinking about our kids who, are watching their families drink on, for social occasions.
Whether it's a barbecue or a wine at dinner or whatever it might be out at the restaurant.
And they're now partaking of a non-alcoholic beer
Yes.
with the family.
Because Dad's drinking his over there or Mum's drinking hers over there.
And we've acquired the taste for it. We enjoy it.
Yep.
And now we're at a party and there's not so much supervision available. We know what it tastes like, but we've never experienced
the effects. Yes.
Of it. And so at home, I could down 6 of those because it has no effect,
But
right?
you probably wouldn't. At home, if it's 0%, you probably wouldn't drink 6 of them, especially if you're a kid. You're just not going to. But at the party, you might try 1 or 2.
Well, and even if you stood your ground, for instance, say, no, I just want the non-alcoholic one, how do you actually know? Because the alcohol content's not going to change the flavour that much.
Well, you wouldn't expect that it would at all. I'm even thinking it doesn't have to be a party. It could be a family barbecue. And if you've got a particularly curious teenager, you don't know what's in their glass, or you don't know that they finished their 0% bottle and then poured some of yours into...
In about 15.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But you're right. They become familiar with the taste, and I think that's where the Alcohol and Drug Foundation are raising their concerns. They're saying you get used to the taste, and that means that when you're getting access to alcohol itself, the taste isn't offensive to you. You have acquired that taste, you're familiar with it, and you want the status that goes along with it. I think that it sends the wrong messages about alcohol. If I'm really honest about it, I don't reckon it's a good idea that kids should be drinking it at all. Full stop, end of story. Because what it sends a message to our kids is, you're not old enough to drink alcohol, but we're going to let you pretend that you're an adult. We're going to give you access to something that looks like it. It just doesn't feel quite like it yet. But they get to sit there at the table as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, and they get to hold a bottle that looks like it's beer. I mean, didn't you used to do this when you were a kid anyway? Pretend that you had, I don't know, maybe a stick in your hand, or and pretend that you were smoking.
Well, it reminds me of those little boxes of fags that used to buy.
Yeah. Well, you're not allowed to call them that anymore.
Well, that's what they were when I was
That's what they were called when we were kids. I can't remember what the new name for them is, but yes, the little pretend cigarette things, the candy cigarettes. And you would actually pretend to be smoking.
Yeah, it's a really good primer, isn't it?
So if you've got a 14-year-old sitting at the table holding that glass bottle with that amber-coloured fluid in it, they get all of the sense of status. They get all that sense of, look at me, I'm an adult. And it won't be long now until I can actually hold the real thing. So I have some really big concerns about it. My initial response as we began talking was very much, oh yeah, the kid's going to hate it. But as I think about it more, and particularly in families where alcohol is the norm, my very real concern is that this could go in a dangerous direction. I think that the Alcohol and Drug Foundation are right. This could be a gateway entry point to alcohol consumption.
So I think I know what your answer is on this. But if it's not a substitute, a non-alcoholic substitute, what are your thoughts on parents kind of just letting their kids have a sip?
Yeah, you know what my answer is, and it's no. There's this thing called the Mediterranean effect, and a whole bunch of people will argue that it's perfectly safe and reasonable, because over in the Mediterranean nations, they do this apparently, to let your kids sip alcohol and have access to it, and just let them be exposed to it and consume it in small quantities when they're young, so that as they move into adulthood, they won't be problematic drinkers. The research evidence doesn't support that. It doesn't actually exist. The effect isn't there. People in European nations, particularly those around the Mediterranean, still have high levels, or as high as us, levels of alcoholism and other problems. And more than that, we've got good evidence, not just from here in Australia, although this is where some of the best evidence is, but we've got good evidence from around the world that when we let our kids sip real alcohol, we give them, I guess you'd call it's parental endorsement of consumption. Which means that when they're with their friends, they're like, oh yeah, my mum and dad let me do it all the time. And it's associated with increased levels of binge drinking and also higher levels of alcohol consumption with kids in their teen years. More than that though, once they start getting into the grog, we know that they're much more at risk of social problems, psychological challenges, physical injury, and the list goes on. Like it's a really dangerous game to play. I had a mum come up to me just the other day when I was traveling, and I was interstate at a school, and she said, oh, my 16-year-old just came to me and said that on Friday night there's a party and it's BYO and the parents aren't going to be there. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And I looked at her and I said, I want to be really nice about this, but can I tell you what I think might be a good solution? And she's like, oh, that's why I'm asking you. And I said, don't let it go. Just don't. And if she has to go, don't let it BYO. Like, she's not taking any alcohol. She's 16, and pick her up before anyone gets in strife. Pick her up at 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest, before anybody's so plastered that the risk of injury, risk of harm, risk of danger increases that much. Like, if she just has to be at the party, work out a way that she can do it safely and get home early. Better yet, host your own little party at your house where it's not BYO, but treat the kids to all kinds of great stuff that they can't get at the party. And I think that's the approach we need to take. There's no evidence at all that it's a good idea for our kids to be getting into the alcohol, and we need to be the parents and say no.
Well, I thought you were going to shock me with something, but you didn't.
Good research evidence and an encouragement to be a great parent who's involved in their kids' lives. How good is it, though, that she said, Mum, I want to go to the party and here's the situation. I think that that's a really big plus, and hopefully their relationship will survive Mum saying no. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Ruan from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. For more about this, see the show notes. I've linked to both the ABC article as well as some research from the University of New South Wales highlighting why the Mediterranean effect is a furphy and what we can do when it comes to helping our kids to have healthy, safe conversations around alcohol. If you want more information about making your family happier, of course, check out my brand new book, The Parenting Revolution. It'll show you how to really help your kids have those conversations. You'll find The Parenting Revolution online at happyfamilies.com.au.